So last class we learned that the proteins are in a state of dynamic equilibrium. That is, they're constantly being degraded and new proteins are being synthesized. While the catabolism of extracellular, membrane-associated and long-lived intracellular proteins, that is mainly extracellular proteins, are degraded in lysosomes by ATP-independent processes. That's what you should remember. While the intracellular proteins mainly, and also the abnormal and misfolded proteins, their degradation occurs in the cytosol and they require ATP. And some of them, that is those which have arginine or aspartate at their end terminus, ubiquitation is required, while the others, they without ubiquitation, their degradation occurs in the proteasomes only. So amino acid degradation, those amino acids which are destined for energy metabolism are deaminated by oxidative deamination. What is the enzyme? Glutamate dehydrogenase is the enzyme that brings about oxidative deamination. Transamination brought about by transaminases, or a dehydrase, serine dehydrase or threonine dehydratase, or amino acid oxidase to yield the carbon skeleton. L-amino acid oxidases, they yield the carbon skeleton, while nitrogen atoms are incorporated into urea and excreted in the urine. And you've seen how the different amino acids, they are converted into the amphibolic intermediates. So glycine, which is alpha aminoacetic acid, the simplest amino acid with only H in its R chain. It's so small, it is very important because of its metabolic role. So first thing in its catabolism, glycine cleavage enzyme present in liver splits glycine to ammonia, carbon dioxide. The one carbon is taken by tetrahydrofolate to form 5N5N10 methylene tetrahydrofolate, and glycine is also oxidized where NAD is required, removes the hydrogens. So this is the major metabolic pathway of glycine, a catabolic pathway of glycine. Glycine may be transaminated by alanine glyoxylate aminotransferase located in hepatic peroxisomes to glyoxylate. So by this alanine glyoxylate transaminase, glycine is transaminated to glyoxylate. And this glyoxylate, its further metabolism is either decarboxylation to form formate or oxidation to form oxalic acid. But here you should remember that glycine can also be deaminated by glycine oxidase to glyoxylate, and this glyoxylate, part of it is converted to glycine. So you know that many proteins require glycine. So particularly collagen, you've seen every third amino acid residue is glycine. So some of this glyoxylate is reconverted to glycine by this transaminase reversal. Now, when this glycine oxidase is not active, it cannot form glycine from glyoxylate. All this glyoxylate then will be converted to oxalic acid, particularly if this decarboxylation is also blocked, to form oxalic acid, which is highly insoluble and forms oxalic acid stones in the kidney, in the renal tract. I said the enzyme glyoxylate alanine transaminase is inactive. It is present, but it is inactive. It is inactive because it is located in peroxisomes. Instead of in peroxisomes, it is located in mitochondria or endoplasmic reticulum, and so it becomes non-functional. This is a targeting defect. Though enzyme is present, when it is not present in its proper place, it will not be able to act, leading to primary hyperoxaluria in case of this enzyme glyoxylate alanine transaminase. So it can also be converted to serine by serine hydroxymethyl transferase, utilizing one carbon from N5N10 methylene tetrahydrofolate. Serine hydroxymethyl transferase converts glycine to serine. Now, special products formed from glycine you've learned: creatine, heme, purinucleotides, glutathione, bile salts. So this creatine requires the participation of glycine, arginine, methionine, and this forms in the kidney. It forms the transaminase forms gonadinoacetate. In the liver, it forms the methyl transferase forms creatine, and creatine phosphokinase converts it to creatine phosphate. The ATP reservoir in the muscle, because ATP is quickly utilized during muscle contraction and it must be immediately replenished, and that is done by creatine phosphate. So when it gives away its phosphate, high energy phosphate to ADP, ATP is formed and this is converted to creatinine, its acid and its anhydride form, which is a waste product that has to be excreted in the urine. And and it participates in heme synthesis. So the delta amino levulinic acid synthase requires succinyl-CoA plus glycine in the presence of pyridoxal phosphate, which brings about removal of the coenzyme A part and the carboxyl group to form delta amino levulinic acid, which forms by further steps it forms heme. It also participates in purine nucleotide synthesis. So it forms the N4, N5, C4, C5, and N9 of the purine ring. C4 5 carbons and N7 glycine forms. It also participates in glutathione synthase, which requires glutamate, cysteine, and glutamic acid. So gamma, glutamyl, cysteine, glycine. So glutamate, cysteine, and glycine. Glutamyl, cysteine, glycine. Glycine conjugates bile acids to form glycocholic acid and glycoquinodeoxycholic acid and their salts. Liver brings about conjugation of endogenous glycine to detoxify benzoic acid to form benzoyl glycine or hippuric acid, which is excreted. This benzoic acid otherwise would be a toxic substance. So it is detoxified by being converted into hippuric acid, which is excreted in urine. And glycine is a constituent of proteins, which is its main function. Every third residue in collagen is glycine, as I already told. And glycine is a neurotransmitter. In moderate quantities, it acts as an inhibitor, and in higher doses, it causes overexcitation. That is about glycine. Alanine, the next simpler amino acid. It is also non-essential, glucogenic, neutral amino acid. It is the vehicle of transport of nitrogen from the muscle to the liver. This is what you should remember. So alanine can be transaminated to pyruvate by glutamate pyruvate transaminase, also called as alanine aminotransferase, which requires pyridoxal. All these transaminases, they require pyridoxal phosphate. They require enzymes that you can remember. And this SGPT, though it is present in several tissues, its elevation is specific for hepatocellular jaundice. So alanine by alanine aminotransferase or glutamate pyruvate transaminase is converted to pyruvate and glutamate. Alanine is also formed as metabolite of tryptophan. So this 3-hydroxykynureninase. So 3-hydroxykynuren is a substrate in the metabolic pathway. This is acted upon by 3-hydroxykynureninase, where this alanine fragment is removed from the side chain of tryptophan. In the fasting state, muscle protein is degraded, releasing amino acids, particularly alanine and glutamine. And alanine is most gluconeogenic amino acid. So this is the Cori cycle, where during fasting, muscle protein is broken down to form. In the kidney also there is a renal glutaminase. It also hydrolyzes glutamine to glutamate and ammonia. Ammonia combines with hydrogen ions to form ammonium ions. So whenever there is increased hydrogen ion concentration, that is in the renal acidosis, when there is acidosis, this renal glutaminase becomes active, so that more hydrogen ions can be excreted as ammonium chloride. This forms hydrogen ions in renal acid in acidosis, metabolic acidosis. The hydrogen ions production is increased, and as a result of which the glutaminase activity is also increased, and this ammonia combines with these hydrogen ions, and ammonium chloride is excreted in the urine, so that the pH is regulated. Glutamine contributes to N3 and N9 of purine. Glutamine contributes to N3 and N9 of purine, and N3 of the pyrimidine and to the amino groups of guanine and cytosine. Glutamine also donates the amino group of amino sugars, N-acetyl hexosamine, N-acetyl galactosamine, which are particularly required in the mucopolysaccharide synthesis. And it also contributes to the amide group of nicotinamide. Glutamate is found in the metabolism of proline, arginine, and histidine. So proline is acted upon by proline dehydrogenase to remove the two hydrogens from here to form dehydroproline, which is then hydrolyzed. Here oxidative scission takes place here to form gamma glutamate semialdehyde, which can be converted to glutamic acid. Similarly, arginine By arginase, it is converted to ornithine. Ornithine on transamination forms gamma-glutamate semialdehyde. Histidine. By histidase, it is converted to urocanate. By urocanase, it is converted to 4-imidazolone-5-propionate, which is then acted upon by a hydrolase to form formimino-glutamate or FIGLU, and this formimino group is taken by tetrahydrofolate to form glutamic acid. If there is deficiency of folate, this formimino-glutamate cannot be metabolized and it has to be excreted in the urine. So it becomes a test for diagnosis of folate deficiency. So we give a histidine load, and if there is deficiency of folate, then formimino-glutamic acid will be excreted in urine. So that is the histidine load test. So the amino groups of all the amino acids can be transaminated to alpha-ketoglutarate to form glutamate. That's what you have seen. This is the glutamate dehydrogenase. So all the amino acids, they can donate their alpha amino groups, except what are the amino acids that do not participate in transamination? Proline, threonine, hydroxyproline, and lysine. So these are the 4 amino acids that cannot participate in transamination. So now glutamate dehydrogenase acts upon it to release ammonia, which in the urea cycle forms urea, which is excreted. Similarly, gamma carboxylation of glutamate can take place. So the specific glutamate residues in blood clotting factors, particularly 2, 7, 9, and 10, and in osteocalcin, they are gamma carboxylated by vitamin K epoxidase. So it activates this carbon by removing the hydrogen, and then by decarboxylation, a non-enzymatic reaction. When carboxylation, carbon dioxide is attached, and that forms gamma carboxyglutamic acid. So decarboxylation. Glutamate is decarboxylated by a decarboxylase which requires pyridoxal phosphate. So any decarboxylase, any enzyme that acts as a decarboxylase requires pyridoxal phosphate as a enzyme to gamma aminobutyric acid, which is a inhibitory neurotransmitter. And if there is a deficiency of pyridoxal phosphate, gamma aminobutyric acid will not be formed, so neurotransmission in excess occurs, leading to convulsions. So that is the pyridoxal phosphate deficiency. Glutamate participates in formation of gamma glutamyl glycine, glutathione, which we have already learned. So decarboxylation here forms gamma aminobutyric acid, the inhibitory neurotransmitter. Aspartic acid. It is also a non-essential glucogenic acidic amino acid. Acidic because the second carboxyl group is there. So on transamination by glutamate oxaloacetate transaminase, it forms oxaloacetic acid, which initiates TCA cycle, and so glucogenic. And as I already told you, glutamate oxaloacetate transaminase is elevated in both hepatic jaundice and myocardial infarction, but it is glutamate oxaloacetate transaminase is more specific in myocardial infarction. Aspartate is an important participant in urea synthesis. So citrulline combines with aspartate in the presence of argininosuccinate synthase, which requires ATP and is converted to AMP and inorganic pyrophosphate to form argininosuccinate, which in further steps will be cleaved into urea and ornithine. So it also participates in N1. It forms N1 of purine ring aspartate. So it also forms the amino group amino group that is attached to the C6 in case of adenine. The whole molecule of aspartate is incorporated in pyrimidine ring to contribute to N1, C4, C5, and C6, N6, C4, C5, C6 of pyrimidine ring. It participates in aspartate malate shuttle, seen this, while glycerophosphate dihydroxystone phosphate produces FADH2 here. Here it reproduces NADH that is utilized, and so resulting in no loss of ATP, whereas glycerophosphate dihydroxystone phosphate shuttle produces only FADH2, and so only 2 ATPs in the respiratory chain of reoxidation and oxidation. So it can also form asparagine even combining with ammonia in the presence of asparagine synthase, which can be acted upon in the liver by asparaginase, as in case of glutaminase, to release ammonia. And L-asparaginase is an anti-cancer drug against leukemias and lymphomas because these cells cannot utilize asparagine and so will die. Tyrosine in a single step. This phenylalanine is alpha amino beta phenyl propionic acid. See this? Alpha amino beta phenyl propionic acid. So phenyl group is this one. So it is alpha amino beta phenyl propionic acid. It is an essential aromatic amino acid, both glucogenic and ketogenic, and is a precursor of tyrosine. That is alpha amino beta para hydroxyphenyl propionic acid. So alpha amino beta hydroxy para beta hydroxyparaphenyl propionic acid. Only hydroxyl group is attached here. So if adequate tyrosine is supplied in the food, the need for phenylalanine becomes minimal. It's converted to tyrosine by phenylalanine hydroxylase, which requires oxygen and also tetrahydrobiopterin as a coenzyme. It's a mixed function oxidase that requires NADPH plus H as coenzyme and incorporate one oxygen atom into phenylalanine. So see this is phenylalanine. So oxygen, tetrahydrobiopterin. So these two hydrogens and one oxygen atom, they form water, while the other hydrogen, where other oxygen is incorporated into phenylalanine to form tyrosine. So this is para-hydroxy position, para position. So beta para-hydroxy phenylalanine is tyrosine. So it is formed, and then this dihydrobiopterin has to be reconverted to tetrahydrobiopterin for this reaction to continue. So that's why dihydrobiopterin reductase, this second enzyme, which requires NADPH plus H, forms it. So that's how NADPH is indirectly utilized here. While you have seen the reactions where NADPH directly participates, as in case of glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase, etc. They will produce that NADPH, that is those reactions. Two hydrogen atoms take up one oxygen atom from this to form water, while the other oxygen is incorporated into the phenylalanine molecule to form tyrosine. Defect in the phenylalanine hydroxylase results in hyperphenylalanemia type 1, which is classical phenylketonuria. The defects in dihydrobiopterin reductase also result in phenylketonuria, but that is type 2 and type 3 hyperphenylalanemias, while defects in the synthesis of dihydrobiopterin itself results in hyperphenylalaniemias type 4 and 5. So when there is deficiency of phenylalanine hydroxylase, tyrosine cannot be formed, and phenylalanine undergoes transamination, so alternate pathway for it, to form phenylpyruvic acid, and that is oxidatively decarboxylated to phenylacetic acid. Or phenylacetic acid is conjugated with glutamine and is excreted as phenylacetylglutamine, which is responsible for the mousy odor of urine in this condition, phenylketonuria. See that? So phenylalanine on transamination forms phenylpyruvate. This phenylpyruvate oxidative decarboxylation of carbon carboxyl group will result in form phenylacetate. Phenylacetylglutamine is excreted in urine. Phenylpyruvate can also, of course, be reduced to phenylactate. So because this is keto acid, phenylpyruvate and phenylacetate, both are keto acids, they are called as phenylpyruvic acid and phenylacetic acid. So that's why it is called as, the condition is called as phenylketonuria. So phenylalanine hydroxylase is deficient, and it is phenylacetylglutamine which gives the characteristic mousy odor in this condition. So these children, they suffer from mental retardation and they will be useless as such unless we start treatment in the very early days of birth, soon after birth, a diet low in phenylalanine. That is all that is necessary to prevent the mental retardation, and other symptomatic therapies may be given. The Tyrosine, alpha-amino beta para-hydroxyphenyl propionic acid, is a non-essential aromatic amino acid because it can be found from phenylalanine. It is both glucogenic and ketogenic, as its degradation produces fumarate and acetate. So it is both glucogenic and ketogenic, as in case of phenylalanine tyrosine, because phenylalanine mainly leads to production of tyrosine only. So tyrosine produces catecholamines, thyroid hormones, and melanin, which are the specialized products formed from this. So its metabolism requires 5 steps, 5 sequential enzymatic reactions degrade it to fumarate and acetoacetate. The first step is catalyzed by transaminase to form para-hydroxyphenyl pyruvic acid. See, tyrosine transaminase forms phenyl pyruvic acid. Ammonia is taken away by alpha-ketoglutarate acid, and we have got para-hydroxyphenyl pyruvic acid. Then next enzyme is para-hydroxyphenyl pyruvate oxidase, which is a copper-containing enzyme and requires ascorbic acid. It converts it to homogentic acid, in which ring hydroxylation and side chain migration occur. See this? So para-hydroxyphenyl pyruvate oxidase or hydroxylase, a copper-containing enzyme which requires ascorbate. So it brings about decarboxylation and shifting of the side chain. Here see, side chain has shifted here, and also hydroxylation has been brought about. So these 3 steps take place or brought about by this para-hydroxyphenyl pyruvate oxidase to form homogentic acid. Para-hydroxyphenyl pyruvate oxidase, a copper-containing enzyme requiring ascorbic acid, converts it to homogentic acid, in which ring hydroxylation and side chain migration occur, and also decarboxylation takes place to form homogentic acid, which is para-hydroxyphenyl acetic acid. So this homogentic acid then is acted upon by homogentisate oxidase to form mallyl acetoacetate, which is isomerized to fumaryl acetoacetate by isomerase. And this fumaryl acetate is acted upon by a hydrolase to cleave it to fumarate and acetoacetate. So that's how it is both. So because it produces fumarate and intermediate of TCA cycle, it is glucogenic. Because it forms acetoacetate and acetate, it is ketogenic. So homogenous oxidase brings about oxidation of aromatic ring, converting it to mallyl acetoacetate. See here, oxidative scission takes place. So here, one oxygen is added here, here another oxygen to this carbon. Both these carbons are oxidized. They will form a mallyl acetoacetate. And a cis trans isomerase isomerizes fumaryl converts it to fumaryl acetoacetate, and it is acted upon by hydrolase to form fumarate and oxaloacetate. All the enzymes in this metabolic pathway of tyrosine except mallyl acetoacetate cis-trans isomerase can be defective, causing metabolic disorders. Defective tyrosine transaminase causes tyrosinemia type 2. So the first enzyme. Then para-hydroxyphenyl pyruvate oxidase deficiency leads to neonatal tyrosinemia. Then homogentisate oxidase deficiency leads to alkaptonuria, in which urine darkens on standing due to oxidation. Later in disease, there is arthritis and pigmentation of connective tissue, which is called as ochronosis, due to oxidation of this homogentic acid to benzoquinone acetate, which polymerizes and binds to tissue. So homogentic acid that is not oxidized as a result of deficiency of homogentic acid oxidase is converted, it accumulates, it darkens, it accumulates in the tissues, joints, leading to ochronosis, pigmentation of the connective tissue, including the joint, due to oxidation of homogentisate to benzoquinone acetate. So homogentisate will not be converted to mallyl acetoacetate because of this block as a result of which alkoptenuria and ochronosis occur. You have seen that this is the block here will result in tyrosinemia or tyrosinemia type 2, whereas this will the tyrosine parahydroxyphenyl pyruvate oxidase will result in neonatal tyrosinemia, whereas the homogeneous state oxidase deficiency leads to alkoptenuria, and this hydrolase, fumarate acidoacetate hydrolase, leads to tyrosinemia type 1 or tyrosinosis. Homogeneous state oxidase deficiency, not from forming alkoptenuria, it also leads to ochronosis, that is deposition of this polymerized derivative of homogenesic acid, benzoquinone, in the joints to form ochronosis, pigmentation and deposition of the connective tissue, deposition of these derivatives in the connective tissue in the joint. All these inherited disorders or amino acidopathies, about which you will be learning subsequently, they are all associated with mental derangement. So early treatment has to be initiated to prevent mental derangement of the child. Defective tyrosine transaminase leads to tyrosinemia type 2 or Rischner-Hanhart syndrome. Parahydroxyphenyl pyruvate oxidase deficiency leads to neonatal tyrosinemia. Homogeneous state oxidase deficiency leads to alkoptenuria, which late in disease, arthritis and pigmentation of connective tissue called as ochronosis due to oxidation of homogeneous state to benzoquinone acetate, which polymerizes and binds to the tissue, causing severe limitation of the joint. Fumarate acidoacetate hydrolase deficiency leads to tyrosinosis or tyrosinemia type 1. So, and this parahydroxyphenyl propionic acid can be formed from fumarate acidoacetate that can be metabolized to cresol or phenol on demethylation. Untreated acute and chronic tyrosinosis leads to death from liver failure. Therapy involves a diet low in phenylalanine and tyrosine. So of course, it is not easy to get a protein which is deficient in phenylalanine and tyrosine. So all those proteins, so they have to be converted to the amino acids, and these children have to be put on those amino acid hydrolysates, which will be quite expensive, of course. So specialized products formed from tyrosine, they include catecholamines, thyroid hormones, and melanin. Catecholamines, including epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine, are synthesized from tyrosine. Epinephrine and norepinephrine are the hormones produced by adrenal medulla, and dopamine is a neurotransmitter that is produced in the nerve endings, particularly in the brain. So epinephrine and norepinephrine are released at the axon terminals of adrenergic sympathetic nerve fibers. Dopamine is produced in nerve terminals, particularly in hypothalamus and diencephalon. They are also produced at this axon terminals, epinephrine, norepinephrine, apart from adrenal medulla. Synthesis of epinephrine from tyrosine requires 4 sequential steps. Let us see what are those 4 sequential steps. See, tyrosine is acted upon by tyrosine hydroxylase, tyrosinase, which is similar to phenylalanine hydroxylase, so forming DOPA. So this DOPA is decarboxylated. So this DOPA is decarboxylated, so to form dopamine. So decarboxylation has occurred. This carbon dioxide is removed to form dopamine. And this dopamine is acted upon by dopamine beta hydroxylase. So this is alpha carbon, this is beta carbon. A hydroxylation occurs here to form norepinephrine. And norepinephrine is acted upon by a methyl transferase. Phenylethanolamine N-methyl, phenylethanolamine N-methyl transferase. To this N-methyl group is transferred by methionine or acetinosyl methionine, the active methyl donor, to form epinephrine or adrenaline. Tyrosine hydroxylase, the rate-limiting enzyme. It requires tetrahydrobiopterin as coenzyme, converts tyrosine to L-dihydroxyphenylalanine. It is DOPA. Dihydroxyphenylalanine. It is subject to feedback inhibition by catecholamines. So this dihydroxyphenylalanine is subject to feedback inhibition by catecholamines. In Parkinson's disease, there is a local deficiency of dopamine synthesis. L-DOPA, the precursor of dopamine, readily crosses the blood-brain barrier, but not epinephrine nor epinephrine. And so it is effective. L-DOPA is effective in the treatment of Parkinson's disease, though not completely, but there will be amelioration of symptoms to a great extent. DOPA decarboxylase requiring pyridoxal phosphate, as I told you, the decarboxylase, particularly in amino acid metabolism, they all require pyridoxal phosphate and requires and converts DOPA to dopamine. Structural analogs of L-DOPA like alpha-methyl DOPA are competitive inhibitors of this reaction. Dopamine beta hydroxylase, a monooxygenase, using ascorbic acid as an electron donor and having copper at the active site, converts it to norepinephrine. Dopamine beta hydroxylase, it's a monooxygenase. So here it is a dioxygenase. Both oxygen atoms are utilized, but only, of course, one oxygen is incorporated. So this is a mixed function oxidase, whereas here dopamine beta hydroxylase, only one oxygen is incorporated. Only one oxygen is utilized. It's a monooxygenase. So then phenylethanolamine N-methyl transferase converts this norepinephrine to epinephrine by methylation. The synthesis of this phenylethanolamine N-methyl transferase is induced by glucocorticoids. This is an inducible enzyme. Degradation of catecholamines. So these catecholamines are inactivated by oxidative deamination by monoamine oxidase and O-methylation carried out by catechol O-methyl transferase. The two reactions can occur in either artery and anywhere. So epinephrine is acted upon by monoamine oxidase to form dihydroxymandelic acid, or both of them. So whereas epinephrine, and then it is converted to 3-methoxy-4-hydroxymandelic acid, or epinephrine may be first acted upon by catechol O-methyl transferase. To methylation occurs to form metanephrine, whereas norepinephrine, so at a different site, this is this methylation, that's why this is normetanephrine, and both of them are converted to 3-methoxy-hydroxymandelic acid, either this first or this first. The product formed is 3-methoxy-4-hydroxymandelic acid, or it is also called as vanillyl mandelic acid, or VMA, vanillyl mandelic acid. So the products of these reactions, 3-methoxy-4-hydroxymandelic acid, that is vanillyl mandelic acid, metanephrine and normetanephrine, they are excreted in urine. In pheochromocytoma, a tumor of irenal medulla, large amounts of VMA are excreted in urine, and this is diagnostic feature of this condition, pheochromocytoma, a tumor of irenal medulla. Now coming to the synthesis of thyroid hormones from epinephrine, norepinephrine. The thyroid hormones triiodothyronine and tetraiodothyronine from tyrosine containing iodine are synthesized as part of thyroglobulin, synthesized by thyroid follicular cell. So tyrosine is utilized for thyroid hormone synthesis, and these thyroid hormones are T3 and T4. They contain iodine. They are synthesized as part of thyroglobulin. Thyroglobulin is a protein present in the thyroid follicles, and the T3 and T4 are stored in thyroid colloid. The thyroglobulin is stored in thyroid colloid, and this is the one that is iodinated to form T3 and T4. In the peripheral tissues, T4 is converted to the more active T3. So T3 and T4, they can be directly synthesized in the thyroid gland and stored and released when required, or it is mainly T4 which is formed, that is converted into T3 in the peripheral tissues, and T3 is the active form. T4 is only, its activity is very less when compared to that of T3. So steps of synthesis of thyroid hormones. Concentration of iodide first takes place. So this iodide I minus is concentrated against a strong electrochemical gradient by the thyroid gland by sodium potassium ATPase dependent thyroidal iodide pump. It is stimulated by TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, thyroxine stimulating hormone. Thiocyanates and perchlorates compete with iodide for uptake mechanism. So see this iodide has to be taken against the concentration gradient inside. So I minus, so this anion is converted, cation is converted to anion I plus. So oxidation of this iodide is oxidized to a higher valence state of iodide by a heme containing thyroperoxidase at the luminal surface of the thyroid follicular cell in the presence of hydrogen peroxide. This oxidation is also stimulated by TSH and is inhibited by thiourea drugs. While this step is inhibited by thiocyanates and perchlorates, this step is inhibited by thiourea drugs. So both of them are anti-thyroid drugs. Now organification of tyrosine or iodination of tyrosine, the thyroperoxidase transfers the active iodine from its iodine binding site to a tyrosine residue of thyroglobulin stimulated by TSH. So here iodination takes place of the thyroglobulin molecule. The oxidation is also stimulated by the organification and the tyrosine residue of the thyroglobulin first occurs in the third position of the aromatic nucleus, forming 3-monoiodotyrosine. See here, so iodination first takes place at site 3, so that is important, that's what you should remember. Then at the 5 site to form 3,5-diiodotyrosine. So iodination or organification of thyroglobulin is taking place. It is brought about by thyroperoxidase. First iodination takes place at C3, then at C5 to form 3,5-diiodotyrosine. Normally both monoiodotyrosine and diiodotyrosine are present in equal concentration, but in iodine deficiency, more monoiodotyrosine is formed. Now coupling of iodotyrosines. Under the influence of again thyroperoxidase, two molecules of diiodotyrosine combine to form thyroxine T4 with release of alanine. See here, this part is alanine. So when it is tetraiodothyronine or triiodothyronine is formed, in this slide I have not turned it, so I'll have to turn it and see this. So this is removed. So and forming T4 or T3. So here again you should remember that one molecule of monoiodotyrosine and one molecule of diiodotyrosine combine to form triiodothyronine. So one molecule of monoiodotyrosine. That's what this is, tetraiodothyronine. So in triiodothyronine, first it is 3-monoiodotyrosine, then 3,5-diiodotyrosine. That forms T3, the active hormone. Otherwise, if it is diiodotyrosine first and then combines with monoiodotyrosine, it forms what is called as reverse T3. One molecule of diiodotyrosine combines with one molecule of monoiodotyrosine, that is called reverse T3. And this reverse T3 is a very weak agonist that is made in relatively large amounts in chronic diseases, in carbohydrate starvation, or when the hormone is not required. Tyrosine residues of thyroglobulin are iodinated. Of this, only 8 to 10% is in the form of T4. So it's mainly, and all the steps of synthesis of thyroid hormones from the oxidation to coupling. The hydrolysis of thyroglobulin liberates monoiodotyrosine and diiodotyrosine. The deiodinase present in the thyroid cells rapidly deiodinates the iodotyrosines and the removed iodides are recycled in the thyroid gland and utilized for thyroid hormone synthesis. T3 and T4 are transported in the plasma bound to thyroxine binding globulin and thyroxine binding prealbumin. When they are stimulated, the hormones can be bound to serum albumin. So they are released, and then they are released attached to the serum albumin, through which they are transported to the several tissues. So thyroglobulin, you see the thyroglobulin molecule. So this is the thyroglobulin molecule. Diiodotyrosine, monodiiodotyrosine, mono, all of them are there. Some of them also be. So this is monoiodotyrosine, diiodotyrosine, or tetraiodothyronine. Some of them will be there, only a few of them, tetraiodothyronine, when they are present, stored in this thyroid follicle, and when required, they are stimulated and they are released. And in the periphery, T4 is converted to T3. And those which remain as monoiodotyrosine, diiodotyrosine, but they are acted upon by deiodinase, that releases the iodine to be utilized for thyroid hormone synthesis. So no iodine is wasted out as such. So T3 and T4 transport in the plasma bound to thyroxine binding globulin and thyroxine binding prealbumin. So both of them they participate. And when they are saturated, the hormones can be bound to serum albumin. And it is only the free thyroxine, which accounts for only 0.05% of the circulating thyroxine, is the active form of the hormone. About 80% of circulating T4 is converted to T3 or reverse T3 in the peripheral cells. T3 is 10 times more active than T4. Synthesis of melanin. So you have finished catecholamine synthesis, thyroid hormone synthesis. Then coming to the third important substance found from tyrosine, that is synthesis of melanin. Melanin means black pigment. Melanin is a pigment that occurs in the skin, hair, and eye. In the epidermis, the pigment forming cells are called melanocytes. Melanin protects the underlying cells from the harmful effects of sunlight. That's why where there is sunlight is bright and more intense, there the people will be darker, because more melanin is required for the protection. The first step in melanin synthesis is the hydroxylation of tyrosine, catalyzed by a copper-containing enzyme, tyrosinase. So similar to that which acted upon in the thyroid hormones, but this is a different one. But mechanism of action is just the same. When that is deficient, this may not be deficient, because in albinism, where this tyrosinase deficiency leads to albinism, the thyroid hormone, the adrenal hormone synthesis is normal, catecholamine synthesis is normal. So that's why both these tyrosinases are different, but mechanism of action is similar. That is, they require tetrahydrodiapterin, oxygen, and NADPH to form dihydroxyphenylalanine. It's a mixed function oxidase requiring tetrahydrobiopterin as coenzyme, similar to phenylalanine hydroxylase or tyrosine hydroxylase or tyrosinase. So tyrosinase, tetrahydrobiopterin, oxygen. Of course, I have not shown NADPH here. NADPH for reduction of dihydrobiopterin to tetrahydrobiopterin is necessary. So the same tyrosinase acts once again on DOPA to form dopaquinone. See this? Okay, I have not shown the steps, it's not required. So dopaquinone is formed, and this dopaquinone then forms indolquinone, which polymerizes to form melanin pigment. So tyrosinase acts on both the steps for conversion of tyrosine to dopa and dopa to dopaquinone. Then this dopaquinone polymerizes to indolquinone, which is converted to melanin and deposited in the cells underlying the skin. So tyrosinase acts again on dopa to form dopaquinone. Dopaquinone is converted to indolquinone through a series of reactions, and the indolquinone is polymerized to form melanin. Generalized deficiency of tyrosinase in melanocytes leads to albinism, while localized deficiency leads to leukoderma. Graying of hair is due to disappearance of melanocytes from hair roots. So that is graying of hair, that's what happens. So malignant melanoma is a condition due to the multiplication of melanoblasts, and the melanogen may be excreted in urine by these individuals, which when kept in a test tube becomes black due to oxidation. So albinism is a generalized deficiency of tyrosinase, leading to, you have seen those people which are very fair, their hair also is not dark, and they have photophobia, and they can get even skin cancers. They are very sensitive to, their skin is very sensitive because melanin is not formed. Whereas localized deficiency leads to leukoderma, patches of white patches, that is called leukoderma. And graying of hair, many of youngsters also get the graying of hair, or the old people, that is due to slow disappearance of melanocytes from hair roots. And malignant melanoma is due to proliferation of these melanoblasts, and these child individuals, they may excrete melanogen in urine, which when kept in test tubes becomes black due to oxidation. That becomes diagnostic feature of the malignant melanoma. Okay, thank you. We'll continue in the next class. Oh, no, this
Thank you,
is
sir.